Hi, everyone. Welcome. So glad to have you here for another Art Toolkit live demo. And today we're just thrilled to have artist, filmmaker, adventurer Max Romey from Alaska. Hi, Max.
Hello from chilly Anchorage.
Oh my goodness, different little climate up there.
A little bit, yeah, yeah. Stuff tends to dry faster and freeze quicker, but it's
Uh-huh.
good. It all works.
Oh, well, Max, I feel like we've known you for ages now and are just huge fans of your work. It's just your enthusiasm is contagious with creating just these adventurous watercolors, and then with your filmmaking, you're incorporating watercolor. And we've had this special collaboration with you as part of our holiday sets that has been so fun that want to just briefly share. I think you've probably got one there, and I've got one here in
Yeah.
front of me.
So fun. I mean, they're great because you can really have them with you anywhere. Like, there's no excuse with these sets of palettes. I love it. It's kind of
They
like, why aren't you carrying water? You could sleep with these things in your like bathrobe pocket.
They are so fun. Right. So you created this really cute little set called Trail Tiles with Hanamola paper, and we are huge fans of Hanamola. And then to complement it, we worked with you to create a really cute little palette, the Demi palette. I mean, it's truly our cutest size palette, I think. And Max, can you talk a little bit about what led you to develop the trail tiles, some of your philosophy around them, and then maybe you can explain a little bit around this palette design, the unique boot print, some of the little cute note on the back, and just share a little with folks some of what, yeah, helped inspire this all.
Yeah, well, I mean, trail tiles were almost an accident. So Hahnemühle, they make phenomenal paper. They're a super environmental clean paper company in Germany. They're great. And they reached out to us about some of this because we were kind of looking for something that was like a deconstructed sketchbook, which is what these are. So it's really just a tin with like 25 sheets, pre-cut, rounded edges, and I don't know if you're the same way, but I have been painting for 25 plus years. And every single time I open up a page of a sketchbook, I freak out a little bit. Like it's like that first page, it's terrifying. It's like, what if I mess up? What if this is the terrible painting? Or like, what if this is the perfect one? And then it's just the mind games with me are wild, and I don't know if it ever goes away. But I had a hard time doing that, and then often I'd like make a sketch and I want to keep it, and I'd tear it out of the page, or like there's a couple videos where I'm, ripping pages out, and it just like, oh, it hurts so bad when you tear anything out of a sketchbook. So
Paper isn't precious, Max. Paper isn't
I
precious.
know, yeah, right, like process over product, but like I can't turn that off. So
Yeah,
what this
yeah.
is basically a deconstructed sketchbook. You got 25 sheets of really nice paper, and it has been a total shift in how I paint, which has been really cool because now I'm much more focused on, the individual sheet. I feel more like it feels something that I can kind of give away in a different sense. Like it just
Hmm.
feels like something more shareable. So we
Hmm.
created the tiles as this idea to be able to kind of break down that barrier, to paint
Yeah.
more, share more, make more, and then kind of take it with you anywhere. And then it's so fun because little stuff like this, you can fit it in there. I mean, I love the folio. That's kind of my go-to thing with a sketchbook. Those are phenomenal. But when it comes to just like literally a backpack, or I'm going on a run or a walk, or I'm a dad, so it's like who knows if I'll have time, toss it in a bag. I'll often just put a, little tiny palette in something like this, rubber band around it or something like that, and then a pen and a brush, and I'm good to go. So I find for me, watercolor has become so much less of a practice or something that I sit down and intentionally do, and more something I kind of fill in the cracks of my whole life. But it's like that gold, that fits together with broken pottery in Japan. It's like
Mm.
watercolor has become this wonderful thing that has just connected so many pieces of my life, and having materials that can go with me anywhere has become crucial.
Oh, Max, I love that so much. And it's something I think a lot about too with carrying around like a pocket art toolkit just everywhere, which incidentally, the trail
Mhm.
tiles can be snugged in, but it's finding those little moments in between. Those the now I'm going to try and remember, is it kintsugi? Or I bet someone will drop in the comments that Japanese practice of repair. It's such a nice analogy.
Yeah.
Um, but those little moments in between. So when you've got that pause, taking those few minutes to create and really low barrier. And I love the small size of these trail tiles and the accessibility. And I think they're super fun. Um, and you've put together this little palette. Tell us about the boot print you chose for the design for it.
Yeah, well, full credit goes to Jennifer as well, who is like a massive part of Trailbound. She's in the comments, I believe, right now. But she's actually the one who put a lot of these together. But the blueprint represents the this journey that I went on recently to the remote shores of Alaska. So I live here in Anchorage. Alaska's enormous. So like here is
Huge.
this is what
Yeah.
Alaska looks like. Anchorage is like here-ish. This is like the Aleutians, Kodiak's down here, Panhandle. Alaska is gigantic and has more coastline than the rest of the United States put together. But that means that like a lot of stuff is washing up on our shores. A lot of plastic, a lot of ocean plastic from all over the world, and it is breaking down into microplastics, which are
Yeah.
you know, having now an impact, but will have a massive impact on everything. And so we were cleaning up a lot of this, and I went out to try to go pick up as much as I could. I ended up making a bunch of sketches of these shoes because we'd find these shoes,
Hmm.
and they'd be leaving little footprints all over the place, without anybody in them. It's, somebody's shoe, it kind of floats away. And it made me realize, like, oh my gosh, I am literally making footprints because I'm sure some of my shoes are in the ocean right now. I've had like
Hmm.
probably 100 shoes in my life. And so it's kind of this reminder that like these things are out there, but also that we could have positive footprints that would also make a big difference. And so being able to have the little footprints, a great reminder. And then, of course, I was following my grandmother's footsteps, is how I went out there. She left behind 6,000 sketches, and I've been
Wow.
following her footsteps to try to usually take her sketchbook back to the exact place where it was and make the same painting in the same place of the
Oh,
same
amazing.
sketchbook 30 or 40 years later. And
Wow.
so all of these things kind of combined into one little palette. And then on the back there, we have the little phrase, paint it forward, which is something that has kind of been lodged in our heads for a real long time. It's like pay it forward, but paint it forward as this
Yeah.
idea of, whether you're following somebody else's paintings or perhaps you are, making paintings that somebody else will follow one day. It all kind of comes around. And so that little footprint is just a great little reminder with that phrase that is literally with me always because these things are infinitely travelable.
Oh, I love it, Max. It reminds me too of just the leave no trace ethic of the take only pictures, leave only footprints, and that idea of having
Mhm.
our little boot print too. And just love all the different stories you're telling. And I know we'll be sure to, we've got in the description the different ways to follow you and learn about your projects because you really are up to a lot of fun things. And before we dive into getting to learn a little bit from you, I just wanted to point out too the other little item we're including with this Trailbound set is a little water brush. And if anyone has been waiting for a Trailbound set, we are just going to be expecting a shipment of water brushes on Monday. So that is the reason we're out of stock. And then we will have more. And then in the future, if we are out of these really delightful special editions, we have our Demi palettes, which are not red with this beautiful engraving, but do fit along with this kit just as nicely. Oh, and you've got a little green one there.
They're so good. Like, can you have enough palettes? I don't know. Not like I
You
don't mean to
can't.
make this like an infomercial or anything, but like they are really great. And then same with the trail tiles too. I mean, like they're phenomenal to have everything all packed away. But if anybody's looking to get started, I highly suggest you could just take a sheet of paper and cut it into a bunch of squares, and it makes it so
Yeah,
much easier. But whatever it is that gets you painting is what you need. And for me,
yeah.
that's been stuff like this.
Make it easy. Well, oh, and we just got a comment in the chat, which I appreciate. Kintsugi is the
Kintsugi,
practice of
yes.
repair. So
Wonderful.
thank you to Kim for chiming in with that. Um, well, Max, you've prepared a real fun little demo for us to actually get to do a little painting with you, which is so fun. And if anyone hasn't yet downloaded this, this is the image that Max you prepared that's available in the description of this video. So you can pull it up on another screen or print out a copy like I've done. And yeah, maybe, Max, I can spotlight you and let you take it from here.
All right, shall we jump right into it? I've got everything all set up. I'll
Yay!
walk you through everything. So if you don't have it downloaded, you're good. It's real simple and it's gonna be just a real fun little sketch. And the beauty of these small sheets of paper, we should be able to make something pretty fun, pretty quick.
Oh, I'm so excited. Well, I've got my little palette, which I'll just share with everyone. I filled with paint. It's based on some of your suggestions. Look, it's fresh too,
Ooh, swanky.
but not precious. And my little piece of paper and brush and pen. So I'll be following along. And if any of you watching live have any questions along the way, just drop them in the chat and we'll do our best to get to all the questions. And really appreciate all of you here with us today live. All right,
This
Max,
is
let
so
me
fun.
let me get you pulled up.
All right, to the studio. Here we go.
All right.
Lamb, jumping over. Can you hear me all right? Everything still work there?
Yeah, looks good. And oh, how sweet. Look at this sweet little surface. It makes me think you've got like a little picnic table or something and you're out.
Right? That's yeah. Gotta exemplify, yeah, the locations. We got a little bit. I'm just gonna tape this down here so it doesn't go all over the place. But this is the traced outline. When you download these things, you should be able to trace them exactly as well. So this right here should fit to the exact trail tile. You can use any sheet of paper, but like when you do something like this, if you put a light behind it, then you'll be able to see it like exactly, sort of.
Oh, or like stick it against your window if you're not in just the dark. Oh, what a
Exactly,
wonderful
yeah. So any
suggestion.
light or something like that, or a window, whatever. So it should fit to a trail tile, but it'll work with any
Are
sheet of
you just
paper as
doing,
well.
oh, for a second I thought you were just doing your phone or something there for
Oh, you can use a phone as well.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. What a great tip. Thank you.
I know all the tricks. The outline is always the hardest part. So once you got that down, life gets a whole lot easier. Okay, so why don't I start? I'm just gonna swatch out some things really quick. So if you're working on it, that's great. It's a quick one. You can also just freehand this stuff. It's not too perfect. But here are a few of the colors that I'm going to be using. Got a little tiny pocket brush right here. You can absolutely use these in the field, by the way. So if you only have this and like no rinse water or anything, you can turn this little middle palette into basically a little rinse water. Like literally that much water is enough to kind of rinse your brush out, and then you can use this as the rest of your palette. But I'm just going to rinse for the sake of expediency here. These are great, by the way. If you've never heard of these, they're like little tiny brushes. They're full of water. You squeeze them, and water comes out, and then it's they take maybe one sketch to get used to, but they are phenomenal.
They're so easy. I just love them.
They're so good. So what I've got in colors here, these are kind of my go-to eight. So I'm so not good with like knowing the exact color of what goes where and how it all goes, but I actually have their names here. But mostly it's a red, a yellow, a green, a light blue, a dark blue, a purple, an indigo, which is kind of a blackish blue, and a sort of brown. So like that for me is like that's all you need, really, to make some wild landscapes. And so here is a little bit of our red. This is Pyrrole Scarlet, just for the fun ones. Almost orangish, almost red. Just give you just a look at all of these. Right down here we have our Hansa Yellow, which is kind of a nice bright warm yellow. Probably got a bit of red in there. Just nice little yellow there. On the green, we've got Sap Green. This I do feel particular about. I have not figured out green. I have not hit my green era yet. It'll happen eventually. But yeah, like Hooker's green, I think it is, or Hooker green. Am I getting that one?
Uh-huh.
It's
Uh-huh.
okay, yeah,
Hooker's
okay.
green. Yeah.
That one is I've tried and it's just like I can never find the right green. Sap green is just like a nice basic full. It's like a nice earth tone green. It's the one that
Yeah.
I can work with. I will get there. My green era is going to be wonderful.
Having
And
a
then
having a pre-mixed convenience green can be really sweet. Just something to get going and save you some time for sure.
exactly. Blue, here is a what do we have for the blue? This is a cerulean blue. There's like manganese blue and everything as well. Those are all good. Just something kind of sky blue has been phenomenal. This is like my go-to Alaska color though. It's like good for glaciers. It's good for sky, ocean, snow. Yeah, this is like the must-have in Alaska. And then for my dark blue, I believe this is an ultramarine blue, and that's just kind of a nice deep blue. It's almost like they're two totally different colors in the way that I use them. But you can also kind of water down your ultramarine if you need. We got our purple. This is a ultramarine. Oh, nope, that's indigo. Or is it? Hold on. This is why you swatch stuff out, right? I might just have indigo on top of my purple. Let's see if I. Nope, that's still indigo. All right, that is definitely indigo. And then maybe purple? Let's find out. Oh, there we go. Okay. They look the same. This is great. I'm glad we did this. And then we've got some ultramarine, no, yes, ultramarine violet. That's like the hidden, that's like the mixed color. Nobody realizes how great purple is until you get some watercolor in there. And then some burnt sienna. So these are kind of the loose colors. But any variation, anything like that is great. But this to me is like the Alaska palette. It's it'll do everything you need and more for kind of these Arctic climes.
Oh, I can totally see that from snow shadows to some of the deep
Hmm.
skies and mixing some beautiful earth tones and rocks. I love that you've got some of the essential primaries and then a couple of those convenient, yeah, pre-mixed colors of the neutral brown and purple and green.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's and this didn't happen on purpose. Like I there's some really cool people kind of going out there testing, like holding up. For me, a lot of times it's just like it would be a mistake taken in the field and it just worked perfectly. So watercolor to me is just a beautiful amalgamation of mistakes and it's just a fun journey. So if you don't feel like you're on the right track, you're wrong. You are. You're doing what you need to.
Yeah, I like your attitude around that, Max. And I feel like color and mixing, the more you do it and play with it, the more intuitive it gets. And so it's embracing that experimentation or just mistakes, as you're saying.
Exactly, right? So okay, there's our swatches. Now, I was mostly just like we're stalling at this point just to if you've gotten time. So hopefully you are all sketched out. And now it is time to actually jump in. So if you're ready, Maria, I am ready. And then is everybody else ready?
I'm ready. I hopefully some other folks, if you want to drop any thumbs up in the chats, anyone coming along. My I didn't quite have time to trace this perfectly. My sketch isn't perfect, but I'm embracing that because practice not perfection. So I can't wait
Exactly,
to throw some
right?
paint on this. Let's go.
Yeah, who knows if we'll even get through this? Yeah, it's like that's the beauty of watercolor. It's such a toss up. But with a little sheet of paper, it's kind of like what do you have to lose? And obviously there's everything to gain. So, and two sheets, right? You can flip it over if you need.
Hmm.
So, anybody who's kind of curious too, I use like a basic micron or something like that, but this is just, watercolor paper. It's not going to bleed through anything waterproofish, or if you have pencil, that's fine as well. But I also realize that we're talking to the experts here, so I could probably honestly learn more from this crowd than than I could explain. So, this is, if you have the sheet, you're gonna kind of see, here is a super fancy version on the phone. Gosh, that looks rough on the screen, but you can kind of see we've got this cool reflection that we're gonna kind of put together, a really wild sky and a couple little figures here. It's a place called Hanging Lake in Alaska because it kind of hangs in the mountains. It's right above Eagle River. It is one of my favorite places in the fall, and we're gonna kind of capture a lot of those cool bright colors. So I think without further ado, should we just like launch in?
Sounds great. And I do have just one quick question
Hmm.
from the chat that thought as you're before you get going with your palette getting too wet, might be nice to show. When you put your palette in the top of the tin, like for carrying around,
Hmm.
do you ever affix it to the tin or just kind of let it sit in there? Like, are you using a magnet to kind of stick it in there or clip it in,
Mm.
or it just kind of
Great.
sits in the tin lid?
Total good question. So when I'm painting and I have like say if I'm painting and like I'm filming, sometimes I'll do this. It
Hmm.
also works pretty well. There's like two tiny little magnets that I'll often bring with me, and I have lost them since. I have a 2-year-old, so hopefully they're not in him.
Oh
But
no.
I think they're somewhere, somewhere. That's my only real concern with tiny magnets. If you have a cat or a dog or a small child, that's the worry. But if you don't, that makes life easy. So I have two tiny little magnets, and usually I'll just kind of use them to actually stick the tin to the palette or the palette to the tin, to kind of put them right here, and that makes life really easy. And then I think I just kind of leave the magnets in there, and when I close this, there's like no real shake. But if you also get the right amount of paper, there's also no real shake. Oh, I guess that's kind of locked in there. This is the same size. So if you kind of, at the,
Hmm.
what is it, 10 sheets or something, if you always have the right amount of paper, approximately that much paper, it's in a rubber band or something, there's no sound. It's not
Mm.
jangling. So I
And
find more squishing is more effective because even without a palette, it'll kind of shake a little bit just how the paper is. So if you can kind of pack it in there, you'll be in good shape.
that's a great tip. And do you ever bring like a little paper towel or anything to wipe it down so it doesn't drip onto the paper or anything, or is that not a problem with how you're
Oh my
using
gosh, paper towel. This is like I should get a Bounty sponsorship or something. Yeah, paper towel is life for watercolor.
it?
Yeah, the more you can bring, or TP, whatever you're using, tissues if you're super fancy. Yeah, this is like my go-to. All right.
Sweet.
Now let's launch in. This is always the scariest part because that first line is always terrifying. But in order for stuff to dry, we're gonna have to kind of jump back and forth. So let's jump in pretty quick here. I will be using a paper towel just to kind of blot stuff out, just to kind of get my textures right because I really want this to be uh, pretty pretty dry in a lot of areas, just for speed. In the field, that's like the biggest thing for me. But I'll explain more after we get our first line, so we get the maximum amount of time to dry. Using a little bit of water, you can always just squeeze out as well. Depends on how fancy you want to get. But let's do it. I'm gonna add a little bit of that yellow to start with, um, and that's gonna kind of we're gonna add a lot of different layers because the mountains kind of carve out this sort of area. I also am absolutely procrastinating, especially with that first line, because it's always so scary. Um, I don't know why I mix those two together. Basically, we're gonna start with some yellow, and then we're gonna add some orange below and kind of mix them on the palette here. So here is a little bit of yellow, just going right up to that line. I'm pretty relaxed about like painting within the lines, except for that border. I love to add a border here, and that is just to kind of make it fancy. It adds like a little bit of fanciness. It also means that the first four things I sketch are a border, and so you really can't go too wrong with that. And so that's there. And basically, I'm going to paint half yellow on top, and then I'll touch some red there, mix it with my yellow to make some kind of reddish orange, and I'll paint kind of half that on bottom.
Yeah, that border is like a little picture frame.
Exact, yeah. It just like it creates this. It's just these little tricks to get me painting, but for some reason, if I put a little border, it feels fancier, feels like kind of a little aside in a notebook, and it's like already ruined, because you already put four lines on the paper, so then you can actually get to work. So you got a little border right there, that one right there, and then we're basically gonna bounce around here. So if I'm going too fast for anybody, you can let me know, but also don't worry about speed too much. I'll let you know like areas like the sky or the reflection where it actually matters on exactly when we put the lines down. So here we go. We're gonna add maybe another up here. Probably same deal. A little bit of yellow, and then we're gonna kind of follow it down. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to carve out those lines and really make them kind of pop later on with these mountains, which will be darker behind them. So we just need to give them as much time as possible to dry.
And Max, did you pre-wet your palette at all? I know in past workshops I've heard you talk about like, the approach to the dirty dishes.
Mm.
You kind of put a little water or with little things like this, are you just diving in with your brush and lifting some paint up?
I'm just lifting. Yeah, you can pre-wet if you want, and that yeah, the activation you can put a little dot of water, and it's kind of like when kind of wet dishes. You do the pre-rinse or something, kind of gets stuff lifted a little bit more. In this case, we're working with something so small, and the amount of paint we're doing. So I feel pretty good with the paint I've got. It's nice, fancy Daniel Smith watercolor right here. So like this red is basically bone dry, but even just like one or two little licks of the brush, and I've got something that's really, really pretty pungent. And just adding a little bit down here. But yeah, it's true. It kind of depending on what you're doing, that's a great trick just to just to pull that color.
And
Maybe even a
Max,
bit of
something I
brown too.
love about your art is just your approach to color. Is you really, I feel like you take the scene in front of you and are able to sort of enliven it with these rich and vivid colors. And do you have any suggestions for folks in when they're kind of taking in a scene in how they might heighten or like what colors to see to exaggerate to kind of play with that I guess more vivid color?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I for the longest time when I painted, it was very, very light. It would be so much lighter than this. I just do layer after layer after layer after layer. And what changed is I'd make mistakes. So something like this, right? So I think I want to add a bit of maybe brown or something. Normally, I would like just wait till it dried, add another tiny cautious layer of brown. But then I would make a mistake where I'd like add a bunch of brown, like, ooh, what's going on right here? And I'd be like, oh, totally ruined the painting. That's a bummer. And you'll see that right there, which seems pretty extreme, it will dry lighter. So I think what kind of happened with me in watercolor is I got this weird sense of confidence knowing that everything was going to dry lighter than it was. And it allowed me just to kind of be as bold and as colorful as I wanted. And then piece by piece, I kind of sank into that and would let myself go a little further. And I think that in doing so, I began to see the colors differently, which is funny. It almost started the other way around. I was in these very colorful places painting very bland things. And then as soon as I began to start painting them as colorful as they feel, everything kind of clicked. And these places, I mean, Alaska's like on its own terms of, a beautiful place, but there's just something about like it just feels so much more natural. Like if I wanted it photorealistic, I just take a photo. But to me, this is how Hanging Lake feels. It's just this
Mhm.
vivid, bright place with all of these colors. And why wouldn't you paint it that way? But it's a good question. Yeah, how do you start that way? Just know that it'll dry lighter. So why not? Just go for it. And also things like this, I mean, this will all kind of bleed into itself. Maybe we even add like a touch of purple or something. That'll really show it. Oh shoot, which one is purple? I think it was this one. Um, let's see, I'll add just a touch of purple. And just to know that it's like this stuff will all bleed around and like it's not quite done. I think that was the other big piece that I learned is that watercolor is more of a collaboration between you and the water than it is, a painter using a tool. You really can't control too much of this stuff and you shouldn't try, but why not kind of give that color and that water free rein to really have some fun?
Oh, I love hearing your reflections on that. Thank you, Max.
Yeah, yeah. Let me see if I can. I'll loop back to it. I sometimes have to like say stuff out loud before it makes sense. Um, but so we're kind of getting these down, just kind of letting them dry a little bit because the big pieces are we're gonna do a big reflection here, kind of a big sky right here, and so we want all of these to kind of be ready to go when that is. So let's add one more, just another little bit of yellow up here. It might bleed into that other kind of bank, but that's totally fine. A little bit of red kind of down there, and then we're kind of sort of doing like that Alaskan rainbow down, sort of yellow, red, brown, purple, as much as you feel comfortable with. Maybe a bit of brown too, to kind of make it fun. And when all of this is mostly dry, there's going to be these two quick moments where the reflection is the only part that like really counts, where it's like that is going to be tough because we kind of have to do it all at once. But I do kind of segment out everything and almost like it's almost like an overlapping, fish scale or something. Like what starts first? What is the first layer that you have to do before all of the rest? So that's the tough part with watercolors, kind of figuring that out for me. And then once you have that, then it's just a matter of just putting the layers in. Got a little bit of purple maybe just for fun. A lot of this too is I'm absolutely procrastinating, or as the British would say, the term is faffing. Faffing is like when you're climbing a mountain or something and you like don't want to keep on going because you're tired, so you just sit and sort of mess with your zipper for a while or like your coat. So there's a
So
lot of
funny.
faffing in watercolor. The scary thing is this sky. I think we kind of have to do it now for drying's sake, but if you look on the insert, it's kind of this wild bloom of a sky that is so hard to get right. So I'm kind of nervous to try it, but like nothing like trying something kind of risky on watercolor live in front of a bunch of people. So the beauty is that we're all gonna have to take this risk. So why don't we jump into that right now? Because that's gonna take a while to dry. And I'll talk you through it. And the issue is we're gonna have to do it basically all at once. Um, with these skies, you really don't want any hard edges. It's kind of a soft thing. And so I'm trying to get one of these kind of moody Alaskan skies. So it's gonna be a lot of indigo. So if you want, you can kind of activate your indigo, just a little drop of water, something like that. And I'm thinking we're basically going to put some water down. Indigo is going to go kind of next to it. It'll kind of move all over the place. And then, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds later or something, we'll put a couple more drops of water and they'll kind of push the indigo around. I would say 10% chance it works how you plan, but 50% chance it turns out really well. So,
All right, you got this,
um,
Max. We
all
got
right,
this.
okay. Well, we got this, right?
We all got
It's
this.
gonna be good. So what I'll do to start is I'll kind of put these little swatches of water here. Don't worry too much about getting this stuff right because we will have kind of some of these darker edges to kind of hide whatever goes awry, and something will go awry. So we've got a little bit of some of this just bouncing around. This is kind of the fun part because it's invisible and you have no idea what you're doing. But I feel like just a little bit of water sometimes, it kind of soaks in, permeates the paper, and then when you add, stuff flows a little bit more. I also love this size just because it's so simple. Like it's just, yeah, there's just something about it where it's like, oh yeah, it's like a little bloom is gonna look enormous because it's just this big. And if you ever, want to make a print or something, you just blow up this and you get all that wonderful texture.
So just to confirm, did you
Yes.
cover the whole sky area in water or keep it a little streaky with water?
A little streaky. I kind of, well, honestly, I can't even see right now. I can't, like, if you can imagine almost like a Dalmatian, I basically put some spots of water in there.
Uh-huh.
And what that's going to do is it's going to create some kind of nice random pattern. So some of it will kind of pull more than others. And that's kind of what I want is something
You,
semi-random. And then
uh-huh.
we'll kind of see how it turns out based on, where the water illuminates. Or I guess
Hmm.
the indigo kind of de-illuminates here. Um, but you can, if you want, you can watch and watch and either learn or watch and learn what not to do. But so here's a little bit of indigo, and I think, right? Yeah, there we go. A little bit of indigo. And I'm going to try to replicate that one as close as I can, but I'm going to kind of put a little arc here, a little bit up here, and it's going to be kind of a push and pull. The push is we're going to put all of this here and it'll kind of spread out and glop out, which should work well. And then the push, yeah, pull maybe, is we'll put some little bits of water and kind of push back on all of that. So here we go. Got a little bit of indigo, and I'm just going to put nice broad strokes, something like this. Yep, looks like I had no water on that section. That's exciting. The more you know. And then a little bit more up here. Just kind of aiming for some of that. There we go. You can kind of see when you hit your little pockets of water, it's kind of like it kind of just softens out a little bit. But that's all right. Okay, and here's why it's so fast, right? So this is going to start drying almost instantly. So now I quickly grab some more water, just touch the edges and start to kind of pull it down and around.
And the magic
And
of
if you
watercolor, watch it flow.
Exactly. Yeah. If you wait too long, you're gonna lose this moment. So in the field, this is like the scariest thing too, because it's like, oh, and that's usually why I do skies first too, because if it goes terribly awry, you don't have this like perfect painting below it to to mess up. Um, Kind of like front loading all of that risk. Or it's like being bold and starting cold, Like be bold and start with the scariest thing. There we go. So now I'm making sure there's water on everything. So what the what the indigo didn't cover, I covered with water. And you can kind of see they're called blooms, or I wonder what these are called, where it's not quite a bloom, it's almost more like it's like a rivulet. But these like they're beginning and they're really gonna form and kind of flow over the next probably minute and a half. And you have this moment now where you can also add these little dots. So this is just water. Say if I add one right here, right there. It doesn't look like anything happened, but now slowly you can see it's basically that water's just pushing all of that basically layer of mud. It's more or less colorful mud that you just put on a sheet of paper, and that water's kind of pushing it away with capillary action. Maybe I'll put another one out here, and then maybe I'll even put one kind of in the middle right here. And this is just water doing water things, but it turns out in this really cool way. And then if you want to, you can always add a little bit more if you want. So maybe a bit more indigo for me right here, because that area looked a little too naked. But it's the simplest thing, but it also makes some of the biggest differences. So we've got kind of this wild amalgamation of all of these things right there. And now this is the hardest part, is to leave it alone because the first half is to make it and the second half is to ruin it. So immediately, like I'm like, I should add some more indigo right here and maybe a little bit up there, but I just want to like make something and then just kind of leave it alone because you got to kind of give it space to breathe, and you really want to do all of this while it's still wet and kind of moving. So if this, how's this looking? Is this making sense?
Oh, I love it. I love your demonstrations and how to be a little more intentional with that wet and wet mixing. I think it's techniques that can feel really intimidating to be a little heavier with the water and and to sort of put the water on and step back and see what happens and embrace some of that uncertainty.
Totally. And well, and one of the coolest things is, so what you're gonna see, I think I can just bring it up here a little bit. Maybe I can focus. Nice.
There it is.
So what you're gonna see is like these little shapes right here. What is so cool is that's something called a fractal. So this shape would look real similar if you were on the space, the space shuttle looking down at Earth at like some of these, maybe like the Mississippi Delta or a bayou or something like that. And as they kind of dry, you can see a few down here. That's because these shapes, it's just water moving sediment is what it really is. And it's so cool because fractals are basically, shapes that repeat themselves over time. So whether it's Earth-sized or in a little tiny square, you can really see them pretty clearly. And I just love that stuff so much. But it's this kind of double-edged sword because you really can't create it. It's like gardening. You can put the ingredients to make it happen, but you're not really in charge. It's the seed, it's the plant. Same with watercolor. You can give it the right ingredients to do something cool, you will never actually control it. And that's what I love. This is, you can do this 100 times, you get 100 very different things. So I love the idea and I really would love to see it too. So if you're making this right now, please send me a photo of your finished work. I'd love to see how these guys turn out.
Oh yes, and we've got on the bottom of the handout tagging at Trailbound Sketches and at Art Toolkit that we also have in our description. And Max, I've got one question. With a scene like this, were you painting this originally on site or from memory or from a photo? What helped inform this composition?
Gosh, that's a good question. I can't remember, to be honest, this exact one. I think this is likely from a sketch and a photo. This is a very cold time of year to sketch because you kind of forget how cold it is because it's so beautiful and bright. And so I would bet I probably made a quick sketch, labeled some colors, and then probably filled it in a little bit. But for me, if you can just like honestly, an outline this much of an outline is enough to kind of lock in the feeling of a place. It's strange. It's like an insect trapped in amber or something. Like I'll have outlines I'll look back at, little tiny sketches from like years, decades ago actually at this point, and I'll remember what I was listening to or eating at that time. So if you can make just like I probably did something where I just made like a little outline like what you saw and labeled, green, red, something like that. Maybe transposed it, made a new one. But really, if you can just put like a mark on a sheet of paper in the wild, it like holds your place. And when you're painting, you kind of come back to it. But I have sketched in these alpine valleys before as well, which is really fun, especially when like mosquitoes and stuff get stuck in your paint. I will say as well to anybody who like painting off the camera, painting from a sketch, painting in the field, like there's definitely this mystique, and I often do paint in these wild, pretty places, but there's nothing unspecial about painting from memory or from a photo of your beautiful hike if you didn't have chance to sit in a snow pile and paint in 30-degree weather for 2 hours or something like that. I often worry that my Instagram makes it seem like it's easy, but it's so hard to paint in the field. It's fun, but it's also so fun to paint back home with a cup of tea.
Agreed, Max.
Okay, so in the order of things, this right here is going to be drying. So we can't really touch this, and we can't really touch this until all of that is dry. Uh, if you wanted to, now would be an okay time to do some splatter. If you see in the painting there, I have like some fun little splatteries all over the place, and that looks like a couple different things. You can kind of scoop up a bunch of paint, pigment. You can kind of flick if you want, or well, you can kind of splatter, or you can flick as well if you kind of wanted some little texture. No pressure to really do it, especially because sometimes it can kind of get all over the place. But now is the point where if you wanted any texture on this stuff, that'd be good to add that. The next kind of big things we'll be working on is we'll be adding this reflection down here. And for some reason, can't quite remember why I skipped this one. I think it was because we have this right here, but I think the next step is why don't we add this and we'll kind of start to see how these layers are going to kind of overlap and interlace. So I'm going to rinse the brush, or you can literally just squeeze it, boom, rinsed from the inside. Although, fun fact, these, when you take them into planes, just watch out because a pressure differential in a plane will kind of push your water out because this is like non-pressurized water. So if you're in a plane and all of a sudden you feel like your pocket get wet, these can kind of leak from the plane. It's not much, and usually it's caught in the cap, but there's been several times where it's like, did I pee my pocket? What is going on?
Oh, good tip.
Um, okay, so in
I do
here we're
love
gonna add
sketching on planes.
exactly right. Yeah, yeah. Or I'm sketching and it's like more drops of water come out than usual. It's like, what is this? And it's like, oh, you can also just unscrew it and it'll be fine. So similar down here, a little bit of yellow, and then I'll add a little bit of some of these other colors, maybe even green, just because it's fall, it's transitioning, all kinds of colors in there. Maybe a bit of green down there. Ooh, I love how that went. But we're gonna work our way down into something kind of purpley or blue, and that's why we did this one earlier, is because now we can kind of give this depth, which will look really cool. Get some green, maybe a brown or something over here. Perfect. I love these brushes. They've got like such a nice sharp point.
I find they're pretty durable too, having seen lots of kiddos use them as well. And I like Max the oval barrel of the Pentel, I think are handy because they don't roll
Oh,
away.
they're so
Um,
good. Yeah, yeah. No, it's I've tried a. This is embarrassing just because you're in my studio, but like these are the these are the water brushes I've tried. Uh, this is 100% the most effective usable one that I've had, just for size and also just like durability. This is a new one because it came with a kit, but the first one I bought like 5 or 6 years ago, I still use. All right, a little bit of that blue now, that kind of ultramarine or something like that. You could also use purple, whatever you want. Um, but now we're gonna kind of hit this edge right there, and you can see, going into purple now, that we kind of get this lovely depth of field thing going on. So you got kind of this calico, like almost Alaskan tundra calico going on here, but because we ended in this nice dark side, this is gonna really shine. And it's gonna be the same up here. We're gonna kind of go like dark, almost shadowy mountain, light, and then probably end with something darker than this edge. Same on that side. And that kind of just gives, yeah, it's hard to do in the moment, but once you kind of have it all planned out, it'll just give like some depth to the whole thing. Lovely. I might actually add just a touch more down here too while I'm thinking of it. There's no shame in going back, and this is just going to kind of give me a little bit of more depth. See, this is the problem. I wasn't light enough because I forgot that it dries darker, and so the dream is you kind of go one and done. If you can just one line and you get the exact value, that's the dream, but it's so hard. I think it probably just takes years of practice. My plan is to kind of be at my peak when I'm 80. I think that's kind of most artists, sort of like I think that's the peak of watercolor artists when you're an octogenarian. So there's plenty of time to master the
Keep
craft.
practicing, keep practicing.
Exactly. Add a
Yeah,
little bit of
we
purple
can all
maybe.
keep practicing.
Yeah. What is funny, right? Like, I work in the world of sports and I film, fancy athletes doing stuff like that and they're all, at their prime and 40 or something. But when it comes to art, I mean, you've got such a long timeline. It's so cool. Like a lifetime of art compared to like a lifetime of, running or any of these other things is just so different. Okay, that's feeling almost dry. Just doing the finger test. Once this is dry, we're gonna kind of work our way forwards here. So almost like starting back in the front, weird watercolor 3D chess game here. But this needs to dry before we can do this. And then once we do this, we'll be able to add those people. So I think if it works, I'm gonna jump back here for this side, as long as I'm not rushing too much. But there is a beauty in rushing too. I find if you have like an infinite amount of time with watercolor, you're not going to make something nearly as good as if you only have 45 minutes or an hour. I don't know how that works, but the rush is good.
Yeah, deadlines can be useful tools.
Hmm. Okay,
Constraint.
so with this one, we're gonna get some nice shadowy mountains in the background. Basically, a little bit of blue, a little bit of indigo, line up top, and then water to kind of pull it down. Here's what that looks like in practice. A little bit of blue. We'll just grab some indigo from the past. Ooh, whoa, too much indigo. A little bit more blue. And then just a touch right here. I'm going to try to avoid those people a little bit as well because I really want them to kind of have their own moment. So I don't want them too hidden. Well, they'll actually be quite dark, even though they'll be kind of a red. They'll kind of stand out. And then rinse that all off or squeeze it out. And then here is some of that blue just being pulled down into that water. This is just pure clean water. Boom. And once again, it looks really boring. Give it like 2 minutes. It's this magic trick. It's going to do something wild. If you want, you could also just like touch up right here, just to kind of really accentuate it. But here, I'll show you again. There you go. You can kind of start to see those
Max,
blooms are happening.
is there a front and a back to the trail tiles that you found that the paper performs differently?
Okay, I notice it a little bit. There's almost two sides. One side is almost like it has like little lines almost. Let's see, you can kind of see it's like this line. It's almost like corduroy. So it's like almost corduroy-y.
Ah, I can just see that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's barely noticeable. And then the other side is a little bit more flat. It's not like the difference between cold press and hot press, but if I want cold press, I kind of use the corduroy side, and if I want things a little bit more flat, I use the other one. But they're both coated, they're both solid. The dream is that we have different types of paper here, probably a next year plan, but yeah, yeah, the subtleties artists will notice. I tend to paint on the non-corduroy side more often, but when I really wanted to hold something, that basically the front side works really well. I don't know if you've noticed that at all.
Yeah, just a little bit. I was curious about your experience.
Wish I could say it was intentional. Maybe in the future it will be. Okay, so we've got a bunch there. That's looking great. Little people are doing their job, so they're just hanging out. And I think probably the next step is going to be this reflection, which I am also absolutely procrastinating on. Watercolor. It's for some people it's like this Zen experience, and for me it's kind of this like compulsion that just has a whole lot of procrastination and stress, and then you end up with a pretty consolation prize. But I love it. Like I can't avoid it. I'm like a dog with a porcupine or something. Like it's like actually no, I take it back because porcupines aren't good for dogs, and watercolor is good for me. But it's like I can't keep away from it, even though it sometimes stresses me out. Okay, so with this right here, and I'm going to try to talk through this, but if you need any more questions before I do it, just let me know. But how we're going to do this is a lot of this sky is actually quite light, so we'll kind of add in this pretty light layer of everything, and then we'll come in once it's like the perfect dryness with just a touch of sort of dark blue or something, which is funny because this is so light and you'd think it would be this reflection, but for some reason in these alpine hills, it's like almost like a like black and white version of what you're seeing above it. It's not like perfect, it's darker. So we'll kind of add a little bit of maybe some indigo and purple in here. And then down here is going to be more of this blue layer. So it's going to be like almost nothing for the whole thing, little bit of something dark indigo here, and then a lot of blue here. And it should create this interesting mix, doing all of it super fast so that it's still kind of wet. And then for our little people, we're actually going to add the reflection before they exist. They're going to be like reverse vampires. And so we're going to put probably, I usually make them red because it's just a lovely pop of color, but you can make whatever color your jackets of your people are. We're just going to put just a touch here while it's still just barely wet enough. That's the idea. We'll see how it actually works in practice. So here we go, or at least here I go. If you need a little bit of time, or if you want to see how this goes, if you want to watch somebody else go off the ski jump first, that is fine. Probably add a little bit of cerulean just to start as kind of my base sky. My indigo is kind of interesting. It's a much more purpley indigo than I'm used to. I'm wondering if I kind of contaminated my colors a little bit. Just just from the, using a bunch of one or the other, which is
Yeah, I was
kind of
kind of
fun
curious
because
about that. It's like mine looks much darker than yours.
yeah, yeah, which does happen. Like often, I'll use a ton of purple or something, and then I'll use indigo, and it'll kind of get trapped in there. But I sometimes like find I love that color combo even better than what I tried to. Like it obviously paint is paint, but like I often feel like the watercolor knows best. Like it is kind of guiding me a little bit, where it's like, oh, that's a cool mistake. That is totally random, but it's somehow also perfect. Okay,
Oh,
a
it's such
little
a
bit of
healthy
purple.
attitude too. I mean, the positivity of embracing what the watercolor brings. And something I always like to remind myself is just finish every sketch. Because sometimes, I mean, every sketch has awkward phases and where I might, put some paint and go, oh, that's not what I expected. But going in with, my final layers can change how I feel completely.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's like those last ones that matter. Although, don't get me wrong, like there's lots of swearing at the paint as well. Like, are you kidding? Come on, purple. You had to bleed into the green. Like, what were you thinking? But it's give and take. Moving super fast here because this is still like this is the wetness. So I'm gonna add my next most kind of flowy color being this blue. I'm gonna add it right to this edge here because I really want this one to kind of flow up, whereas my reflection, I want it to be kind of contained. And so because we did that really lovely bit of kind of that nice yellow earlier, we have that kind of angle and um, not angle. We have that little bit of a lip, that little edge that we can kind of work to, and it feels so like there. But order of operations is totally backwards. Now I'm gonna add just some water just to kind of move stuff. So there's almost like you place your paint and then you kind of provide these pathways for it as well sometimes. So here we go. It's doing a lot of its stuff on its own, but just kind of scooting around just a little bit in case it needs that. And this also allows me to kind of work a little longer into some of these because it's just wetter. It kind of provides that wet on wet for a little longer. I sometimes add another color too. So you almost have like your dark, but then I like to have these layers of it because it's never like just a shadow. Here's some purple, I'll probably even add some indigo, but it's never like just a shadow. It's kind of layers of it. So it kind of complexes stuff up in a nice way. Also, probably a form of procrastination because the little figure reflections are going to be so tough to get right. So I may as well dink about in the corner of this pond until I work up the bravery to actually paint them in.
Oh, you can do it, Max.
I don't know if anybody else has these like battles, like when they're just like, well, painting, and then just like, okay, you can do it. Put in the bird. Put in the bird. Little celebrations in a very quiet studio, with just me and a cat
I
at
don't think
midnight.
you're alone, Max. I don't think you're.
Well, yeah, I've got the cat, so there's always that. So there we go. We've got that blue, and then a little bit of purple and a little bit indigo, and it looks a little bit all over the place because it is, but I'm actually gonna like leave that. No, I'm not. I can't help it. I'm gonna put a bit more water. I should have just left it because it is gonna kind of maneuver itself into where it needs to be. Um, just the time that it goes. But this is slowly coming together. Basically, the last thing we'll add is these little people, and that's kind of the cornerstone. That's what really put it in. But something like this right here, we're gonna wait maybe just like another 10 seconds or something because I want this to be almost exactly where I put it. So it's just kind of knowing your paint, knowing your timing, and that's why I love things like little palettes like this or trail tiles that go with me everywhere because it's just a matter of just doing enough of it. You kind of know what's going to happen when and where. Color theory is important and all of that stuff, but I don't know if anybody talks about timing theory. But for watercolor, it's just like this amazing dance, and you just got to know your steps and you got to know your timing. And then once it becomes second nature, you can really enjoy the music. Okay, so we got big chunk there. I think I'll mix up the right colors, and then it's more or less going to be like brushstroke, brushstroke, and we'll be in good shape. I'm thinking up here, we're going to put a little bit of purple, maybe just a touch of green, just some of those fun little counter colors. Bit purple going. If you want, you can also absolutely add some yellow or something in there as well. That is totally acceptable. A little bit of purple, and then maybe no, let's just mix it on the paper. You can mix the perfect color in the palette, but it's kind of more fun when it kind of scoots around on the paper. There we go. I'm going to stick pretty close to the edge, just kind of trying to keep it in check. Okay. Oh, yeah, you can see it's kind of taken off right on that side, but that's fine. I'll just kind of pull that around. But because we did all this earlier, we're kind of just carving out these lighter sections, and they're looking phenomenal in that, I think. Bit of indigo maybe in there. And really, you just need to put it right on the edge. You're just kind of laying it down, and it's gonna do its own thing. It's going to use capillary action and all the other tricks of hydrodynamics to to scoot around. But the temptation to put it exactly where it needs to be is real. So kind of trust it. It'll do its thing. And now that we've got the dark colors, feel free to add some of those fun ones. And I think, I mean, I assume it all kind of like layers itself as need be, but I kind of like adding those light colors on top because I feel like they kind of move and scoot and like green or yellow. Put that right there. At this point, it's kind of just random playing, a little bit like just sprinkling, you know, a garnish or something on a fully cooked meal. It's not gonna make a huge difference, but it's the little things that actually do make the differences.
They add up.
They do add up. Yeah, so I got a little bit of green there just for fun. Maybe I'll even add just a touch over here, just for kind of fun. I didn't do it on the original, but that's looking lovely. Okay. The next piece on this is going to be those people, so prepare yourself mentally and physically. A little bit of water. I don't know about you, I've got a little tiny spot of dryness right here. Sometimes that just happens in watercolor, and I'm always torn like, do I do I blot it? Do I leave it? Do I trust it? Usually I just end up putting a bit of water on top of it, but I feel like it's like it's like a zit or something. You should leave it alone, but it's really hard not to. Just try to do something. Or like any of these things, it's like you pick it until it becomes an actual problem. But there we go, just a little bit of that, and then I think that's going to be fine. I think if we just leave that, that'll do its thing. You can always come back in with like those stronger pieces of a reflection, kind of where it like overhangs the water. That'll be super dark, but for the most part, that's feeling good.
It looks good, Max.
Okay, I appreciate the encouragement. I should do all of my paintings live with you. I feel like that would be a things would be a lot more positive. Okay, getting some red ready or pyrrole scarlet if you're fancy, and kind of keeping things relatively dry, which you wouldn't think you could do with a brush that literally has, you know, a vein of water in it. But for some reason, these brushes can just get super sharp in a lovely way. So I've got this like just laser thin, maybe I can focus on it. I've got this like laser, there we go. Look how thin that is. It's like a needle. But I've got this really thin little bit of scarlet, and I'm going to kind of make almost like a upside down um, exclamation point, but I'm gonna kind of stack it almost as if it's like a cairn. So it'll look something like this. And as I get into those areas that are still wet, it'll kind of flow a little bit more. And the reason I don't do that instead of just like a real, just defined point is because, you know, water moves and stuff like that, and you get little ripples no matter how big of a body of water you're on. Got just a little bit right there. Being way too kind of precise, even though this does matter a lot. You could probably do this in like 3 seconds, but you can also slow it down. There we go. If you need, you really can kind of brighten up everything. I think on the example, I was like, that was practically just painting with pure watercolor, but you can also kind of have a nice muted one as well. Looks great. Cool. There's that reflection. And once again, it's one of these things where you're not going to appreciate it until it's done, and also the less is more. But that's looking like a good reflection. If you want, you can even add like pants. I'll probably make their pants indigo or something like that. Um, or maybe your figure's not wearing pants. But either way, if you want to do a different color reflection as well, You can always add just a touch down there. Voila. Okay, we're getting there piece by piece.
It's
So if
close.
you, it's close, it's close. And if you're just finishing up this section right here, I'm gonna just launch onto the next one because this is really good, just need some time to dry. We're not really gonna know how it turned out until it's ready. If it's still wet, you could still do things like add just a touch of water here or there, but for the most part, I would advise kind of leaving it alone um, until it's dry and kind of seeing how it turned out. But all we have left is this mountain, this little like hillock, and then these people, and then maybe a couple tiny details. So we are actually really close, but I do think you're not actually going to see this painting until these two people are in, and that's when it kind of clicks into place. So I'm going to jump right into this mountain to give this little section just the max amount of time to dry before I add those people. If you look at the example, this mountain I do kind of differently. I have normally you kind of have these like nice even, parts where this is where it's shadowy or this is where it's not. These are funny because you kind of have these bits of light, but also you have like whole halves of mountain in shadow. And so I actually have kind of a nice fall color stripe here, and then I have a really dark shadowy mountain. It doesn't make sense almost when you're painting it, but then in retrospect, when you actually look at it all together, it really stands out. So I'm gonna give that a go. And what that's gonna look like is kind of adding some nice light swatches and basically layering it like a sandwich, a little bit of purple, a little bit of, blue, and then just coming in hard with some indigo that kind of works its way down here. So I'm gonna start with right down this section, kind of where those people are, just adding maybe a bit of orange to my yellow or red to my yellow to make orange, something like that. And just adding, I don't know, just a touch down here with a little bit of water, hoping that everything is dry on the other side. Maybe just a bit of purple just to really accentuate that kind of bank that these people are on. Voila. Yeah, something like that. Kind of light. And then working up, let's get a little bit of yellow or something. Honestly, not as bright yellow if you can. Maybe even like a touch of brown or something, because we want that foreground to be as the brightest thing. So there we go. A little bit of brown, a little bit of there, and then maybe just lean into that purple. I feel like purple is one of the most underrated watercolor colors out there because on its own, it's a little boring almost. But then as soon as you mix it with literally anything else, it just creates these fantastic combinations of everything. So here's some kind of wet purple. And I really love it when it just like the browns, the reds, the yellow. I just love purple doing its thing. So I kind of let it go just like that. Let's add another touch right up here.
Yeah, you've inspired me to want to play with purple more, Max. It seems like it just taps into the shadows and the
Yeah, lean into
pop,
your
making
purple
other
era.
colors
That's
pop.
probably what I'm in now. Eventually, I swear, I will hit the green era, but oh, the purple era is beautiful. Got a little bit of that. And then up here, maybe I'll start with blue. This dark blue is kind of my like my Kirkland brand indigo. Where it's like kind of an off-brand, but it also works. So I'll start with blue in places that I want to go indigo, and then I'll put indigo on top of it. It's kind of like hedging my bet a little bit, but I'll add this blue right up top. I'm not gonna go all the way down. Just kind of let it fade off, and then I'll probably put some indigo on top of that. Perfect. And then maybe just a touch indigo right on the top. You got to be kind of worried a little bit because indigo or like whatever your darkest color is what the eye is just naturally drawn to because it's the darkest point in contrast, and it's always a little iffy to put that in like the background, especially if subjects in the foreground. But there's also just something for like trusting how something looks in nature, which in Alaska is just these dark shadows on the corners of mountains a lot of time, and I just love how that one turned out that first time. So I got a nice little shape here. I'm going to come back in with a nice little streak, a little bit of indigo down here. And by indigo, I mean blue first because I'm a coward, but that's okay. Cowardly Lion was one of the best characters. Just a little bit right there. And the nice thing with blue is if I like it that way, I'll just leave it. Maybe a bit there.
I love when watercolor starts to feel like sculpting.
Right? It's the best. I also like that you can come back in. So I'm gonna add maybe a bit of like yellow or brown or something here. You can come back in with some brighter colors and they kind of push the darker ones out of the way. Which I always thought with watercolor, it's like, once it's dark and there's nothing, you have to add a darker color or make everything else darker. But you can kind of add a little bit like touches of these lighter ones and they kind of do scoot some of those others out of the way, just subtly. That's feeling good. This is like I said, watercolor is great because you're never gonna get the same painting twice. But I'm loving the I'm loving this kind of stripy abstraction that's going on here, knowing that these two little people are just gonna pull everything right into the center. It's gonna be great. That's looking really cool. I just noticed my reflections down here kind of fell apart a little bit. Totally fine. Like I said, watercolor knows best, but I might come back in there and add just a little bit more, something strong. Probably just a touch of red, and maybe even a touch indigo, just while it's maybe still wet. If it's not, that's fine too. But let's see, we got, yeah, there we go, it's still a bit wet. So I'm just gonna add those in because I really want that reflection to be kind of a big part of the painting. There we go. Cool. We'll add their pants as well, just to kind of hold that contrast. Sometimes I wish I could see in like black and white because I feel like that really gives you a good sense on, you don't rely on the colors, but you can do the same thing by just kind of squinting your eyes, or if you have glasses, you can just kind of take them off, and it kind of gives you a sense of value.
For sure.
Oh,
Sometimes if I've got a photo too, I'll just pop it into black and white and mess
right.
around with it a little bit. It's nice we've got those easy tools now in our pockets.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, it's so true. It's like, yeah, it's such a simple thing, but it makes such a big difference. Okay, that is looking swell. Part of me is tempted to like put some nice blues down here because we got this lovely edge, but I'm going to stick to kind of how it was. That's the danger of it. As soon as you do something a second time, you're like, oh, try that out. Well, this is dry. I think this is dry. Is that dry? You can always do the paper towel test if you need. Boom. Yep, it's dry. While that's dry, I'm gonna add just this little lip right here. I made this one green just because you had that. It's funny. It's like every other hummock is a different season. So here is, full summer, and then you got fall, and then those mountains are just winter. Sky is definitely bringing winter in this one. Touch there, and then maybe a little bit of blue just down on this edge. Let it work its way up. Blam. Okay. It's getting there. It is getting there.
You just got little people left, Max.
I think there's just little people. I'm gonna give them, because I think that is still a little bit wet. I'm gonna give them literally the last say. But if there's any other little things that you wanted to add, now is an okay time to do that. That could be little splatters of something. What I'll sometimes do is add a second layer just to kind of show shape of things like this. So you got kind of this, you can kind of feel it rounding down into this little alpine lake. And these are great because it's basically just a bunch of snow melt. Um, it's like these flat little lakes that just almost like stairs going down. Great reflections. I don't think many fish, but you can kind of feel it going down. But if you add this little bit of shadow toward the edge, it kind of holds their shape in a really cool way. So I'm gonna mix up a little bit of blue and maybe some purple and just add little pieces of shadow right to the edge here. Pretty transparent, but just enough to notice.
And Max, I realize time has been flying.
Oh my gosh, do we need to finish this up?
I think we may need to. I could paint all day with you. I'm very
Holy cow,
relaxed
wow,
and
that went's so fast. Well, quick. This, like I said, painting to a deadline. Let's add some people. Uh, they're also the
I mean,
easiest to
I would just
do.
love to paint all day on this, but it's looking awfully close. I mean, it's
Oh
always
yeah,
brings
well,
that question of when is something done.
exactly. Well, it's important to like, the first half is to make it, the second half is to ruin it. So sometimes you got to cut yourself after the first half. I'm just gonna add some. I've got some red here. Just add some little bit of red to my little figures. There's one, there's two. Same color jacket, fashion disaster. That's okay. And then for the little heads there, kind of make, hair or skin tone or whatever you want. But to keep it from all bleeding together, I'll probably just put just a touch of hair, that razor thin brush, and then probably grab some indigo for those pants, even though it might bleed up into the jacket. Boom and boom. Voila. If you want to be really crazy, you can add a bird or two. We have lots of raisins and eagles, especially if stuff is dry.
Oh, you're
And it's
being
just
brave.
like just a touch of a V. Let's see, we'll put one probably here-ish. No, yeah, here. So just like a touch of a V. Always send them in pairs because, good company. Boom. And there we go. Hanging Lake, right above the Eagle River in Alaska on a lovely fall or spring or summer day, because you never know because it's Alaska. Although it's not winter because it's not frozen quite yet.
Oh, Max, it came together just beautifully.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's such a small thing, but like all of this could fit in a pocket, is what I just love. It's like, it's so simple. You don't need enormous paper to make good art. And then when you do kind of get into the details, you just get these lovely blooms that you never could on a bigger scale. And my whole life I've been told that I need to paint big, and I'm finally painting how I want to, which is this size and this stuff. And it's so fun to share.
Oh, and you feel like you're just living and breathing watercolor as it fits into your life all the
E-
time.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, Max. Well, if anyone just joined us more recently, we do have trail tiles available and our sets, the Trailbound set, which includes this beautiful red custom Demi palette with the engraving from Max and his team. Uh, those should be back in stock on Monday. We're just waiting for a resupply of the mini water brushes. So just be patient. They're not sold out forever, just for a little while, and we'll be back online soon. Um, and Max, you were saying we'd love to see people sharing here. I can pull up my camera if you want to pull you up and show you
That
what
would be
I've been working
amazing.
on. Um,
Yes, please.
this has been so fun to paint along with you, and I'm sure that many other people have been enjoying themselves too.
Oh, how
Um,
cool is that? Wow, look at that sky.
and
Oh my gosh,
oh,
I
well,
love it.
you gave some nice prompts.
Look at that. It's just like the Virgo where it's coming down. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. And I also like how I just really like your reflection is so accentuated.
Well, now
Also,
I want
did you
you in my studio the whole time I'm painting. This affirmation is very nice,
I
and
could record a
anyone
playlist.
and anyone who wants to share, go ahead and tag at Trailbound Sketches or at Art Toolkit on socials, or drop us an email, hello at Art Toolkit. We'll be putting a little blog post with this demo, and might even be able to pop some of your art in there. And yeah, we just love this creative community. And Max, I know, speak for myself and the whole Art Toolkit team, is we appreciate everything you're doing for the whole arts and adventure and travel community. And tell us more. I know you've got some tutorials on your website where if people want to learn more from
Mhm.
you and have more trail tile inspiration, tell us a little bit of what you've got going on.
Yes. Well, and to be fair, I am just painting it forward. Like it is so cool. This community is what kind of gets me up in the morning to do all of this stuff, and I couldn't do any of it without that. So it is so not one-sided. But in that, we have created all kinds of fun tutorials and things like that. Footprints on Katmai is currently going on. There's also the KMTA, like a bunch of really cool Alaskan panoramas on trail tiles. Those are free to sign up for, actually. Like if you sign up now, it's 100% free, and then you get it forever. And then we also have a fun Advent series going on. It's in the newsletter. So if you sign up for a newsletter, we send you a cool tutorial every day
Amazing.
for this Advent. So it's just been really fun to be able to share more, and we're constantly putting more on the website. On Wednesdays, we have free live tutorials on our YouTube channel, Trailbound Sketches, and it's a journey. I'll be following my grandmother's sketches for the next 300 years because that's how long it will take. But yeah, it's so cool to share more, and I hope people really do a lot of sharing this holiday season too, because there's nothing quite like getting a hand painted something from anybody. It might be the most janky sketch on earth, but to get a gift like that means the world. So I hope people feel brave enough to start sharing their artwork around because it's the coolest thing.
Truly. And once you give them away or you keep them for some of your own display, I've seen my friends hanging like a string from a
Mm.
little nail and clipping them to a string, putting them on your fridge. I've got kind of my cables on my studio wall, little tiny easels.
Yes, little easels are phenomenal for this stuff. Like, look at that.
Yeah,
Instant, yeah,
don't even have to
it's so good.
frame.
Or if you
We're
have
gonna,
little frames,
oh, those
you just like
are
Amazon. Yeah,
adorable.
it's like yeah, it's just because they're small doesn't mean they're great. It's like they hold so
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
more. Travel
Wonderful.
size.
Well, everyone who joined us live, thank you so much for being here. This is our last live demo for the year, so we'll look forward to seeing you in January. Stay tuned to our newsletter to hear what's going on, and stay tuned to Max's. Sounds like there's just so many amazing things to be inspired by. So, Max, I know you inspired me today, and I know so many of our folks here. So, wish you all happy holidays and happy new year, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, well, thanks for making the palette possible and paint it forward.
Paint it forward. Bye, everybody.
Oh, is it
Yay!
done?
We are off.
Great. Awesome.